I planned to confess my feelings to Betty on my coming-of-age day, but she set me up with her rival. Later, though, I did exactly what she hoped for. I managed to sway her rival's heart, letting her grab the first love she had long coveted. But when I eloped with someone else, Betty lost it. Betty had always liked her best friend's guy, constantly thinking about him, loving without being loved back. To make her dreams come true, she adopted me when I was 16. It was raining continuously for 3 days in the northern suburbs. When Betty's goods truck arrived at the orphanage, the slipperiness nearly led to an accident with the youngest kid there. Ignoring everything, I dashed in front of the truck and pushed him away. The truck stopped just in time. The door opened, and a foot hit the muddy ground, wearing clean and expensive shoes that didn't fit the shabby surroundings. I tried to stand up despite the pain but fell into the mud again. A black umbrella moved over just in time to shield me from the rain. A serene yet beautiful face came into view, looking down at me with no emotion, wiping the dirt from my face. When she saw my face clearly, her deep eyes suddenly shrank. Then she inexplicably smiled while pulling at the corner of her lips. Her stare made my skin crawl. When I tried to get up again, she gently cradled me, her voice soft as if feathers brushing against my ear. "Don't move, breaking a bone wouldn't be good." She then instructed the person holding the umbrella to drive us to the hospital. The journey was warm with the car's air conditioning, and the fragrance inside was overwhelming. Her arms held me firmly the entire time. I was in the hospital for 3 days before being discharged. On my return to the orphanage, the person who had carried me was there too, sitting on my usual creaky wooden bed, with a natural air of nobility about her. Seeing me, she said, "You're called Lucas, right? I'm Betty. I know you have a sister who needs a kidney transplant. I can help her find a donor and cover all the medical expenses. Would you be willing to come with me?" I nodded without hesitation. My sister Lily, only 12, suffers from chronic kidney failure. A transplant is the only way to extend her life. But we're too poor. We couldn't even afford treatment, let alone a piece of candy she longed for when her mouth tasted bitter. I'd fight tooth and nail with other kids for even one piece, whenever kind donors offered snacks to the orphanage. So, I went home with this woman before me, and my sister Lily was sent abroad for treatment by Betty. The two of us siblings were separated, and Betty raised me until I turned 18. That's when she hosted a grand coming-of-age ceremony for me. Almost everyone of status was there. She introduced me as her lost son, recently found, and promised to cherish me as if I were a treasure. The crowd applauded enthusiastically, yet someone whispered, "Doesn't Betty's son look a bit like Leo?" The hushed voice was quickly silenced by a warning shoe. I clenched my fingers slightly. After Betty left the stage to rest, I followed her upstairs. At 9 p.m., the night draped a layer of black gauze over the massive floor-to-ceiling window. The third-floor lights were off. From the reflection of the overhead chandelier, I saw Betty standing by the railing, her gaze fixed on a guy on the first floor, his white shirt and black hair resembling my usual attire. Betty squinted slightly. Smoke lingered as it slipped past her lips, and her eyes looked somewhat out of control. I knew that look by heart. Whenever kind souls would adopt a child from the orphanage, those left behind showed the same expression: jealousy, envy, reluctance. I asked her quietly, standing behind her, "Why say I'm a lost son? We're not related by blood." Betty turned her head, her tone indifferent. "Is that bad? Many people would kill for it. So does that mean I can't like you?" The words were so direct. Even Betty raised a brow after hearing them. Yes, I like Betty. Since the moment she promised to save my sister 2 years ago, I started liking her. Because of her, I no longer fear my only family in this world might perish one night in a damp, dark room. I was safe from the advances of the orphanage's cook, could eat my fill without fighting, and didn't worry about being abandoned. What rat from a gutter wouldn't crave the light? So, I wholeheartedly liked her, even wanting to be by her side forever. Betty didn't reply. Instead, handing me 2 glasses of freshly poured wine. She nudged me to the railing, pointing at the woman she'd been looking at. Her name's Helen, my best friend. Go toast her with this wine. When you return, I'll have your answer. I glanced at Betty, and then down at the crimson liquid in my hand, and went downstairs without further questioning. But just as I finished toasting and prepared to collect Betty's answer, everything before my eyes became hazy. Before long, my vision went dark. When I woke again, daylight poured in. I was lying in some unfamiliar bedroom. My clothes were in disarray, and beside me on the bed sat Helen, whom I'd just toasted. Faced with the scene, she clutched her head in panic, muttering, "What happened? How could this happen?" A shocked scream pierced the scene. It was the man who had once held Helen's arm. His trembling finger pointed at us, screaming in a guttural rage, "What are you two doing? Helen, how could you do this behind my back?" "Leo, it isn't like that. I don't know why." Helen tried to explain, but Leo was already in front of the bed, smacking me hard across the face. Before storming off, Helen immediately ran after him. I licked my lips, tasting blood mingled with salt. I looked down, struggling with my clothes for a long time, unable to get dressed properly. Then tears spilled from my eyes. My fingers clenched tightly enough to leave nail marks in my palm. Fake. Everything was fake. Only the scheming was real. The scandal of a night between Betty's suspected son and the already attached Helen hit the news trending, quickly suppressed by the powers that be. I stayed in the room, alone. I burned my diary filled with all my thoughts. Then, I picked up scissors and chopped off my hair. I finally understood why Betty loved my hair so much. No matter how busy she was with work, she'd come home every day to brush it. She wouldn't let me dye or cut it. Even the shampoo smell was her own creation. But all of it was just because of Leo. I was naive enough to try and win her favor by excelling in everything she wanted me to learn: tea ceremony, etiquette, calligraphy. For 2 years, I thought I held a special place in her heart. Who knew she raised a replica for her rival? The burnt smell alarmed the butler. He rushed to call Betty, who snatched the scissors from my hand, cutting my palm in the process. Ignoring my wound, she glared at the hair scattered on the floor in anger. "Lucas, stop going nuts," she scolded. I bitterly asked, "Is this why you took me in? With this scandal, how can Helen be with Leo? Why choose me?" I didn't get it. In terms of looks, Leo and I are worlds apart. Even mimicking his style only made me barely resemble him. Betty paused, then answered, "It's your eyes. They're captivating. Ever since I saw you at 16, I knew no woman could resist them. Why not tell me earlier?" There was a change. They suddenly decided to marry next week. I'm out of time. I crumbled inside. I was just bait in rich people's love games. The butler interrupted, reporting that Leo said online he'd face everything with Helen. The wedding was delayed 2 months, but it was still happening. Betty turned pale and smashed a vase against the wall. It didn't relieve her jealousy, so she broke whatever she could in the room. Not caring about her tantrum, I turned to leave, but she stopped me. With a hoarse, commanding voice, Betty said, "Lucas, I need them apart in 2 months, or you'll never see Lily again." Furious, I turned back. Saving Lily was another of her schemes to manipulate me. Leo's sticking with her. "Why do you think I can tempt Helen?" "You can," Betty insisted, looking into my eyes. "I told you, no woman can escape your gaze, Lucas. You're a natural hunter." The next day, after agreeing to be Betty's tool, Helen came to apologize. Betty had a whip, forcing her to kneel and take the punishment in the family shrine. She claimed Lucas had suffered enough in the orphanage, so Betty couldn't bear him being humiliated on his coming-of-age day. Helen accepted her fault and took 2 lashes. Before the 3rd, I ran in to shield her. Betty's next strike, filled with personal vendetta, nearly knocked me out. Tears streamed as I pleaded, "Sister, stop. It was me who drugged Helen. I liked her on my own. Punish me instead." Right after, I fainted. When I woke up, Helen was by my bedside. "What did you mean by that? You drugged her?" Struggling to sit up, I shook my head. No. But saying so shields you from her blame. Lowering my head, I forced a weak smile. Helen, marry who you love. I'm okay. Helen tightened her lips. I saw pity in her eyes. Soon they found the culprit. Betty, with her means, pinned it on a scapegoat claiming he acted on behalf of a rival family to shame Betty's clan at my ceremony. Helen visited, finding me with a razor poised at my wrist. She grabbed my hand. Lucas, what are you doing? Helen, I thought I found family, home, happiness. But my sister seems more concerned with reputation than me. She wants to marry me off to Wendy, who's much older and a widow. How could she? Helen angrily hit the wall. I'll talk to her. Their argument in the study echoed. What else can I do? Betty fumed. With such a scandal, who will marry him? You care so much. Will you marry him? Helen didn't respond for a long time. Pale-faced, Helen returned to me, apologizing. Sorry, Lucas. I can't help. I should be responsible, but I'm with Leo. Her words didn't surprise me. They weren't easy to break apart. As she watched, I dimmed the light in my eyes, quietly staring at my feet. Helen held me, apologizing over and over, begging me to stay safe, saying my actions hurt her heart. Letting her hold me, I said, Helen, not your fault. It's just how it is. This place gives me everything but love. Yet only you offer a hug. I'm already content. Helen, like me, had a rough and lonesome childhood, returning to a house full of scorn at 7. Hearing me, she clung tighter. I cut up all the suits in the closet with scissors, right in front of Betty. She frowned. Without those, you'll never look like Leo. I couldn't help but laugh, barefoot before her. Since she used me, whatever love I had for her had vanished. You rich folks are always putting on a show, being polite on the surface, saying you like those gentle, suave types. But really, you lose your mind over a sexy guy. White dress shirts. Ha, so boring. Who told you that anyway? I tossed her a book. 7 Days of Passion. Love in the Time of Control. Betty frowned. What kind of nonsense is this? Learning more can't hurt. Right then, my phone buzzed. It was Helen, inviting me out to watch the stars. Since that day, Helen's been asking me out a lot. She's already got the reputation for cheating. She can't handle another scandal. I waved my phone at her. The outcome will be what you want, but you shouldn't worry about how. With that, I took a drag of my cigarette, blowing the smoke right into Betty's face. Then, I placed the cigarette, now marked with my lipstick, into her mouth. Betty's pupils shrank, 'cause she's a clean freak. But she didn't dodge. Helen and I went for a motorcycle ride up the mountain road. I just got my license recently, but I'm already pretty good. We sped along at breakneck speed, but I didn't let her win. When we finally got to the top, Helen was surprised. How can a kid with no money ride so well? I looked out into the distance and smiled. 'Cause I'm not afraid of dying. Mentioning death, Helen quickly covered my mouth. Probably 'cause me using a razor on my wrist scared her before. Don't talk about dying. I nodded, my warm lips brushing across her cool palm. Helen's fingers curled slightly. Before she let go, she cleared her throat. You beat me? What's your wish? I thought for a moment. Treat Leo right. You guys should be happy. She was shocked. You're not asking for anything for yourself? I looked up at the vast sky full of stars, sighed. My life is what it is. If God's listening, let blessings go to those who can still be happy. Helen furrowed her brows, like she made up her mind, grabbing my hand. Lucas, I won't let you marry into that Song family. I smirked inside, and over at Leo's place, he was complaining to Betty about Helen's secret meetups with me. Helen always says she's busy. She'd pick up my Instagram calls right away before. Now we're not even married, and she's already dismissing me. The wedding stuff is so complicated. I'm handling it all myself. Leo's eyes were red. She doesn't care about me like you do. Betty patted his back. Her family is about to choose their future heir. She must be under a lot of pressure. You gotta understand, Leo. You're busy too, but no matter what, you always make time for me. Betty's eyes were gentle. There's still time. Have you considered me? Leo jumped up from her lap. Serious. Betty, don't say that again. Seeing Betty looking disappointed, Leo softened. But even if I marry Helen, we'll always be best friends, right? You're still the most important person in my life, Betty. Am I the most important one in yours, too? Betty nodded. Leo happily grabbed her phone. Let me see if I'm still at the top of your contacts. Relief washed over his face when he saw he was still pinned. Promise me this spot is always mine. Even if I marry. Deal? Deal. I was outside listening to this whole thing. Turns out, noble, icy Leo is nothing more than a two-timing player. Is anyone good in this tangled web? I shook my head. When Betty and Leo came out, they ran into me. Leo, sharp-eyed, noticed the jacket on my shoulder belonged to Helen. His lashes trembled in anger. Did Helen go out with you? I didn't bother hiding it. Yeah, Helen saw I was down and took me to eat. You think you deserve her clothes? He lost his mind, lunging to grab my jacket, all while scratching at my neck. You've been after her all along. Huh? You set it up to sleep with her. Huh? So young yet so conniving. Betty tried to stop him, but only to protect Leo, fearing I might hurt him. Honestly, I've got some fight in me. The orphanage was all about survival of the fittest. I had to protect my sick sister from a young age, often getting into bloody brawls just for a meal. Betty worried too much. He's her treasure. Why would I hurt him? I let Leo beat me. The crazier he got, the bigger the rift with Helen. The sooner Betty would get her happy ending, and this charade could wrap up. Leo tired out. He told Betty, I want him to kneel and apologize. He can't get up till I say so. Betty frowned. Leo, he's still my brother. So you think I'm being unreasonable? Betty, you just said I'm the most important person in your life. If you can't even do this, then we're done for good. Of course, Betty couldn't bear the thought of losing him. So she told me, Lucas, go kneel and apologize to Leo. And so I did, kneeling and apologizing. All night long. When daylight came, Leo finally emerged from Betty's room, her shoulder marked by his teeth. Whatever happened in there is anyone's guess. But Betty was in a great mood. For years, she's longed for Leo, loved but could never have him. At least with my interference. She tasted a bit of what she wanted. Seeing Leo off, she finally remembers to help me up. I'm already so numb, I can't move. She helps me into the room. You did well. Lily will get the best meds. I stay silent. She tells the butler to get the meds and lays me down on the bed. Then she uses a swab to apply antiseptic to my neck. Leo sure is heavy-handed. He busted your lip too. I smirk. The lip isn't from Leo. Helen did it. Betty's hand freezes in mid-air. Her voice lowers. Helen kissed you? What, really? I tease. Did you think a chat would charm her my way? Betty straightens her lips. What else happened? I try to remember. Had a bit much to drink. Can't recall everything. She leans in, unbuttons my shirt, and stops when she sees the bite mark on my collarbone. It's deeper than the one from Leo. How dare Helen do this? Didn't you fight back? I chuckle, buttoning up with my numb hands. Betty, you really gonna play forgetful? You're the one who set me and Helen up initially. Betty is at a loss but quickly says, nothing happened that time. Wow, did you monitor in real time? That's kinky. I mock as I struggle to get up and head back to my room. Betty grips my arm. Don't let her near you again. Well, what about Leo? Betty goes silent. What are you pretending for? I break free and walk back to my room. Truth is, I didn't expect Helen to come looking for me. The night before, she tried to set me up on a date. It's no secret my incident made Betty's family frown on me. So the girl I was supposed to meet wasn't very polite. After some drinks, she got feisty. You're a good-looking guy even if your rep's trash here. I am just into your type. I acted calm, but under the table, I was calling for help. Betty was my first call but didn't pick up. Of course, it's silly to expect her. Leo doesn't call often. She's got better things to do. Next, I was about to dial 911 when Helen burst in. I was pinned on the couch, pants at my thighs. Helen yanked the girl up by her collar and slapped her hard. The girl spat some blood and cursed, "Helen, are you crazy? You set this up." Yep, I thought Helen had lost it too. She really wanted someone to take me on so she could ease her guilt. But why backtrack last minute? Helen stripped off her coat to cover me and took me out. She suddenly hugged me. "Sorry, Lucas. I got selfish. I feared you'd ruin my settled life, so I rushed to set you up. But when you two actually met, I panicked. Lucas, I won't give you away again. I think I'm falling for you." Did I like her? Of course not. Women like her, they're the worst. Helen's promises aren't nearly enough. She quickly ditched her first love. How could I expect her undying affection? Compared to Leo, I'm just a bit more charming. Separating them entirely is tricky, and it's a long road ahead. Back that night, Leo punished me to kneel all night. See? There's the perfect setting. Helen soon found out. She comforted Leo, then came to see me. Noticing the scratches on my neck, she gently patted my head. "Leo really is spoiled by me. Do they hurt, Lucas?" I shook my head. "Nah, blow on them and they're fine." She chuckled, then blew on my neck and kissed it. That was when Betty showed up with meds. She saw it all. After Helen left, Betty came in to apply the antiseptic, a bit aggressively with that swab, like scrubbing off a layer of skin. She only stopped when I winced in pain. "You sure nailed the role of charming Helen quickly." Huh? No clue why she was getting all snarky. So I just replied, "Wouldn't have managed without your guidance, sis." She was fuming, tossed the swab and slammed the door. Nutcase. After that, Helen would often sneak out with me. We went bungee jumping, racing, hiking, things Leo would never do with her. She liked my spontaneity, my youthful energy, and fell deeper for me. That day, she wanted to camp on a mountaintop. One tent, spending the night there. I mean, I'm no kid. I knew what it meant, so I agreed. Things needed to move to the next phase. I might see Lily soon. By the time Helen and I reached the peak, dusk was settling in. The western sky still had a bit of red hue left. Very pretty. I hadn't seen such a view in ages. Helen grilled some meat on a little stove, boiled tea, and had me eat while she set up the tent. When the sky turned completely dark, the tent was done. Exhausted, Helen sat across the table and drank from the cup I had. Then her phone went off. It was Leo calling. Even if Helen confessed her feelings recently, she's been playing both sides. Unwilling to give up her boyfriend, unwilling to let go of me, the thrill. Women, they want both, don't they? But I don't push her for a decision. I just nibble snacks silently. Doesn't matter much to me. Helen soon turned off her phone. Makes sense, it's my night after all. Deserves some respect, right? I snapped a pic of the mountaintop night view and tweeted it. Soon, Betty texted me. "Where are you?" "The butler said you're not home." I replied, "Big sis. I'm an adult now. Why are you still checking up on me?" Betty hates it when I call her sis. I only do it when I'm trying to get under her skin. When I was heading home, she said, "Did you forget I set your curfew at 9? I replied, "Didn't forget, but I got something important to do tonight." "What task?" she asked. I turned my back to her, lowered my voice, and said slowly, "Sleep with your rival." Before I knew it, Betty called, so I just switched off my phone. My Twitter pics are all scenery, no tags or locations. "Betty, you'd better hunt me down. 'Cause even beautiful views get boring after a bit," I thought. Helen said, "It's getting chilly. Let's head back to the tent." "Right on." I nodded, noticing the lights suddenly coming on at the base of the mountain. I smiled coyly. We ducked into the tent, just me and Helen, the atmosphere ripe with tension. Her hand touched my face. "Lucas, you cool with this?" she asked. I nodded. Just as she was leaning in, the tent was yanked open. About 10 bodyguards circled us. Betty yanked Helen away, then pulled me up, growling, "Lucas, we're going home." I shot Helen a pitiful look. She was fuming. My almost catch flew away. But hey, I never really planned to sleep with Helen anyway. It's like that song lyric goes, "The things you can't have are the most tempting." Betty was covered in mud, the heavy mountain mist making it worse. The lead car got stuck in a mud pit, causing a chain reaction behind it. She practically crawled up the mountain for me. On the way down, rescue vehicles hadn't showed yet. She dragged me by my wrist, making me twist my ankle. When the cars finally came, we rode back home. At home, she snarled, "Lucas, is this how you seduce Helen? How else would I do it? Take her to see snow, moonlit strolls, and deep talks about life and philosophy? Sis, if I tried it on you, would you go for it?" Betty was speechless with anger. "You're not seeing Helen again." "Why not?" "Just because. But Leo and Helen's wedding is around the corner. If you don't act fast, you'll miss your shot." Betty went quiet. She's still clinging on. "Although things didn't go down with Helen, I've got a little something for you." I took out my phone, opened the album, and tossed it to her. Her face darkened when she saw the pics of me kissing and hugging Helen from every possible angle. I said, "Send him to Leo, it'll make tonight worth it." I smiled sweetly. "Aren't I the best, sis?" But Betty, like a bolt, lunged at me, taking me by surprise. She kissed me fiercely, then bit my lip so hard it bled. Just then, an alarmed voice came from the door. It was Leo coming to confront me. He stood there in shock, covering his mouth. "Betty, how could you with your brother?" he stammered, before storming out with teary eyes. Betty just turned away and began applying ointment to my swollen ankle. "Not gonna run after him?" She just grunted, "Not worth it." She found it boring. Seriously? Rumors spread like wildfire that there's something between Betty and me. Rich folks, siblings, scandal, it just sounds so juicy. Helen and Leo patched things up in no time. A marriage between two powerful families isn't so easy to break. Their wedding day was approaching fast. Saw their wedding pics on Twitter, both smiling, but looked like they were in pain. Meanwhile, I was under lockdown at Betty's place. She didn't want me messing with Helen and Leo's affair anymore. "Why don't you want Leo?" I asked. She didn't answer. Just when I thought I'd get nothing, she said, "On your birthday you said you liked me and wanted an answer. Still curious?" I chuckled, "Nah, lost interest. Who'd want someone who'd shove him into another woman's bed?" Betty lowered her gaze. "When I heard you stayed overnight with Helen, I lost it. If she touched you, I swear I'd have killed her. Funny how it feels to get jealous over you." It was crazy to her too. She loved Leo for ages, deeply. Yet, I had somehow twisted her heart, taken over her mind. "I'll make sure Lily gets the best care. Stay by me, love me like before. Okay?" "Sure." I lied through clenched teeth. "You won't help Lily otherwise, will you?" There was silence. I knew Betty's tactics. Underhanded and shameless. God, I hated her. But I said, "Yeah, I promise." The day Helen and Leo got hitched came quick. I was watching birds from the window, drifting back to the times with Lily at the orphanage. She was frail, and the bully there sneered, "Lily's gonna die soon." More drumsticks for me. Orphanage was hanging by a thread. Meals with meat were rare. So, enraged, I threw rocks and wrestled with the brat. Couldn't win, but I didn't fear. No matter how many times I got beaten down, I'd rise again. That night, I got 3 drumsticks for Lily. She cried, "I don't want to eat drumsticks anymore. Brother." She sobbed. "Miss her, haven't seen her in ages." The window got tapped. I leaned out and couldn't believe it. Helen was there, supposed to be getting married. "Lucas, come with me," she urged. I was stunned. "What are you doing here? Aren't you supposed to be getting married today?" "I'm not getting married. I've thought it through. I don't want to be an heir. So I don't need to keep Leo happy anymore. Lucas, I like you. I want to be with you." Helen actually ditched her wedding for me. Couldn't believe it. "I knew Betty was keeping you locked up. She's at the wedding today too. I brought people with me. We can get you out." I was still frowning when she said, "I know where Lily is." Knowing she knew about Lily meant she knew my true identity. Maybe she guessed everything was my and Betty's plan. I know everything, but I don't care. She reached out her hand, smiled. "Are you coming? We're running out of time." I nodded and jumped out the window. I wanted to see Lily. Helen wasn't as shrewd as Betty, so she was relatively easier to handle. I didn't know where we were going, just that we were driving out of the city. She still had her wedding dress on, and there was a bridal bouquet in the car. She opened the window and tossed the bouquet out. It was already time for the ceremony, and the bride was missing. The hotel was in chaos. Betty called. I was thinking about pretending to be at home to buy Helen some time. But Betty was yelling on the other end. Lucas, you ran off with Helen? Don't you want to see Lily anymore? Come home. That was quick. Helen took my phone, hung up, and tossed it out the window. Lucas, stop overthinking. You can't rely on Betty. She loves Leo so much. How sincere can she be to you? When did you know she liked Leo? Helen scoffed. I've known for a while. Leo knows too. But none of us said anything. I couldn't alienate Betty's family. Leo wanted to enjoy the attention of two women. He got quite a lot out of both families over the years. I looked down. How ridiculous. The road out of the city was blocked. Betty's convoy quickly forced our car to a stop. We underestimated Betty's power. I urged Helen, quick, tell me where Lily is. Just then, the window smashed with a bat, and the door was yanked open. Betty dragged me out of the car. Others pinned Helen down. Betty grabbed my wrist, expressionless, and told the bodyguards, hit her. They didn't care about Helen's status and pinned her to the ground. No, stop it. I tried to intervene, but Betty held me back until she signaled for them to stop. Helen's face was bloody. Betty looked coldly. One Leo isn't enough? You want Lucas too? Did you really think I wouldn't get angry, calling you my sister? Helen got to her feet shakily, smirked, then looked at me. Lucas? Lily's whereabouts? Shut up. Betty's face changed as she pulled me away. Helen continued, Lily? She died half a year ago. I froze. Felt like the blood in my veins froze too. After the kidney transplant, her body rejected it fiercely and she died not long after surgery. Betty didn't even buy her a grave. She didn't tell you, did she? I stared at Betty in disbelief, trembling. Is it true? Betty looked evasive, soothing. Let's go home first. Betty, answer me. Betty went silent. I slapped her, tears unstoppable. How could she? Half a year ago, what was I doing? Going through all the lessons Betty arranged for me. Being molded into Leo. Becoming a tool for her plans to break up love rivals. And my Lily? Suffering in a foreign land. Alone without her family. So scared and afraid of pain. In her final moments, how desperate was she? Did she call for me? Did she say it hurt? Did she hate me? But I knew nothing. Betty kept her plans, but I was clueless. I'm the most unqualified brother. I thought I could handle everything, but I failed my sister. Leo showed up, fuming at the scene. Lucas, you deserve this. You took what was mine. This is your karma. Your sister deserved to die, you do too. Betty snapped. Shut up. You're yelling at me? Betty, you yelled at me for him? Leo came over to hit Betty but got thrown aside by bodyguards. Amidst the chaos, I passed out. I woke up in Betty's house. She held my hand gently. How are you feeling? Is anything hurting? I pulled my hand back, eyes full of cold anger. Betty, I want to see Lily. Her mouth opened, then closed as she sighed. That afternoon, I saw Lily's urn. She was just 12 when we were separated. She was tall despite malnutrition. And now she was just a small urn. How did it come to this? Wasn't it cramped for her? I held the urn, eyes vacant, tears all dried. I stopped eating and drinking. Without Lily, I had no reason to live. Betty stayed with me. She was guilt-ridden and in pain. Begged me not to torment myself. Lucas, don't do this. Hit me, yell at me, do whatever, but please don't be like this. I'm scared. I just stared at her, numb. Then give me Lily back. Give her back and I'll forgive you. She pressed her lips together, silent. After that, I started trying to escape with Lily. We fled to the sea, to the edge of the cliff. But every time Betty found us, she locked me in the house, took away all knives and sharp objects. Even during showers, she'd have someone watch me. I refused to eat, so she'd force-feed me. I couldn't sleep, so she put calming herbs in my drink. She was full of schemes but terrified I'd die. One night in my dreams, I saw Lily. She was young, healthy, and smiled. Said she had loads of chicken legs and candy. Never had to fight for them anymore. I cried and asked if surgery hurt. Were you scared at the end? Do you blame me for missing that last moment with you? No way, she grinned, showing her canines. How could I be mad at you, bro? I'm your biggest fan. Next life, I'm still your sister. When I woke, my pillow was soaked and I felt clear-headed. Why am I doing this to myself? I have to live well, outlive the bad guys. The next day, I took Lily out. Betty blocked the door, wouldn't let me leave. I just want to bury Lily. She's been out too long. Her soul needs peace. Betty thought I'd come around. Nodded. Excited. All right, anywhere you want. I'll get her the best burial plot. Help you arrange it all. Growing up in an orphanage, Lily and I had no family, no home. Nowhere that lingered in our hearts. So, I chose to take Lily to the Temple Tower. It sits atop a mountain, the city's highest spot. Wherever I go, as long as I look south, I'll see her. Upon reaching the peak, I planned to take Lily inside alone. Betty wouldn't allow it. She feared I'd do something crazy. You want to follow me? Fine. But you need to crawl those 999 steps on your knees. I agreed. Holding Lily's urn, I stepped forward. Behind me, Betty went down to her knees. Inside the sea hall, incense danced and chants lingered. A profound peace enveloped me. Hands clasped, kneeling on the mat, I made a wish. Lily, be a happy, healthy kid in your next life. As we descended, it was late afternoon. Betty's knees were probably done for. Pale-lipped, she said, rumor has it, those who kneel all 999 steps get a wish from the gods. I wish we could go back to our first meeting. If there hadn't been scheming, you'd have loved me lots, right? I chuckled. Do you daydream like this in broad daylight too? Helen and Leo's engagement got smashed. When she told me, she was the lightest I'd ever seen her. These years at home, she said, had been stifling. Being a mistress child, her family elders looked down on her. Even her own father didn't acknowledge her. She stifled her personality, lived in her brother's shadow, kept sweet-talking a man she didn't love, befriended rivals, trying to please everyone. Running away with you was my happiest time, she confessed. I knew we'd be caught but wanted to see Betty and Leo knock down a peg. After a pause, she earnestly apologized. I'm sorry. My motives weren't pure, but I genuinely liked you. Lucas, you're the only unpredictable thing in my life. She asked if I could ever grow to like her. I shook my head. We've schemed against each other. Two villains, let's not taint love. After Leo got dumped, he sought Betty out a few times. The woman promising to love him forever finally had enough. She shut the door, deleted all his contacts. Born handsome and proud, Leo had juggled two women effortlessly for years. In the end, he grasped neither. I guess I do feel a bit sorry for him. I got dragged into this mess and wrecked the privilege he should have basked in. Not long after, Leo's family faced ruin. Neither Betty nor Helen's family helped. He fled abroad, vanished from the scene. A year later, Betty fell ill. By then, I was off in college, doing well on a full scholarship. Stopped using Betty's money. Changed the name on my registry. The wealthy, glamorous life wasn't for a kid like me. The housekeeper begged me to visit Betty. I refused. Finals were coming. I couldn't even spare time at the library. On New Year's Eve, my roommate mentioned a stunning woman waiting outside. I went out and saw my class senior. She invited me to ski at Wanlong Resort. I declined. Told her I preferred reading. Offended, she shoved a box of chocolate into my hands before leaving. As she sped away, I noticed Betty standing there. Wearing a wool coat, she was still striking but thinner, ghostly pale. Got lots of girls liking you, huh? Her eyes dropped to my chocolate, voice hoarse with what seemed like jealousy. Why are you here? I asked. You wouldn't come see me, so I came to see you. She moved closer. There's a kind of herbal, woody smell on you. Why haven't you used the money I sent you? I have nothing to do with you guys anymore. Why would I use your money? She paused for a second, then chuckled. You're really silly. You should be spending my money. Spend it hard. Go crazy. Don't you even know how to get back at someone? The dorm's about to close. I'm leaving. I didn't want to argue with her anymore, so I turned and left. Betty stumbled a bit as I did. Almost lost her balance. The butler rushed over to support her arm, barely keeping her up. Turns out she's really sick. Lucas, come back for the new year. She called out to me, her voice mixed with the wind, carrying a kind of indescribable sorrow. I really miss you. I ignored her. Another spring came around. A woman claiming to be a lawyer found me. Turns out Betty passed away not long ago. On her deathbed, she notarized her will, leaving all her assets to me. I looked at the documents in my hand and muttered, "Dead." The lawyer nodded. I didn't hear much after that. Life is so fragile. So was Lily. Betty's ashes are kept in a tower on the hill. A tower. Even in death, she hasn't forgotten to mess with me. So when I go to visit Lily, I'll end up seeing her too. My roommate patted me on the shoulder. What are you spacing out for? Let's go to class, we're gonna be late. When I came back to my senses, the lawyer had already left. I took one last look south. The sun was warm, skies were clear. Everyone in this story is a villain. There are no winners. I donated all the money to social welfare organizations, to help the kids in orphanages. I thought, even without family around, their childhoods should have chicken legs and candy. May there be love in the world. May everyone be healthy.